G'day mates, it's Busta here, and I would like to give Best Fiends a big shout out for sponsoring this episode. And you know, when you finish binging the latest riveting podcast on your list, there's always one lingering question staring you in the face, right? Now what? Sure, you could surf the net and deep dive down the Wikipedia wormhole researching everything related to the show, but when your brain, or your browser tabs maybe, are full to the brim, it might be time to take a break from it all and change the pace. And this is when I like to kick back and clear a few levels on Best Fiends. Recently I've really enjoyed some of the levels and the puzzles, especially some of the boss levels, and I've actually been playing it a fair bit between recording sessions when I need to rest my voice and take a quick break, which has been a really nice way to play. And I think that's what I really love about Best Fiends the most. It's a fantastic boredom quencher, but also it's great for casual gameplay in moments of downtime and throughout the day. I also love too that more levels, events, challenges are always being added, so the game never really runs out of things to do. The game is also free to download, and with over 100 million downloads, this 5-star rated mobile puzzle game is a must-play. So, download Best Fiends free today on the Apple App Store or Google Play. That's Friends without the R, Best Fiends. When I turned 11, I started babysitting my nieces and nephews because I was finally old enough. I'd been babysitting for maybe about 4 years when this happened. I was about 15 at the time, and my sister worked early mornings, so she had asked me to stay the night to babysit for her and whatnot. I wasn't allowed to have a phone, so my mum would let me take hers just in case, but I babysat 2 boys. One was about 8 at the time, his name was D, and the other was 3 or 4, and his name was M. My sister lived in a not-so-great part of town, so I would always keep the doors locked up at night. Plus, I like to listen to scary stories, and I was super into true crime as well, and just a pretty paranoid kid. Now, there was a pretty large apartment complex next to my sister's house, and it had some pretty sketchy people there, but they had a pretty nice playground and a basketball court right outside the house, and we would go there to play there a lot. On this particular day, though, I had just woken up and I was making some French toast for my 2 nephews. I was listening to music with my earbuds because they were still sleeping, but I knew that they would be up soon. And you know when you have music in your ears, how sometimes it sort of sounds like someone is calling out to you or you think you hear something? Well, I kept hearing noises and I kept pulling my earbuds out to listen, but the noises would always stop. I must have done it about a dozen times too before eventually I just chalked it up to my imagination. But about the time that I was finishing up the French toast, my nephews came out of the room and into the kitchen ready to eat. I sat my younger nephew in his Busta chair and started cutting pieces up for him to eat, while my older nephew was sitting at the table with a plate full of French toast. We turned on the XM radio and started playing some kids' music while eating. And like I said, I thought that I was hearing noises again, but I just kind of tuned them out at this point. We finally finished eating though, and I put the dishes in the sink and got the kids dressed. They were begging to go to the playground, so I gave in and said sure. And as I was getting dressed, I heard a really loud crack all of a sudden. I jumped and ran out of the room pretty freaked out and went to check on the boys instantly. D came out of his room with M in his arms, and I looked at D and said, "Did you break something?" He shook his head though and looked absolutely petrified. Well, I told the boys to stay in the hallway since there were no windows, and I wasn't really sure what was going on, but something was for sure. I started to walk around the house to see if something had fallen, but nothing looked out of place. But that was when I saw a shadow peeking through the front door. The door has a sort of oval glass pane, but it was difficult to see unless you had your hands covering your face while pressed against the window. I couldn't see his face, but he was in all black, and he definitely had black gloves on. I was standing to the side, so he couldn't see me. He looked around for a minute or two until he ran around the house again. I quietly ran back to the hallway and shoved my nephews into the bathroom and whispered, "Lock the door behind you." He was panicked and confused, the poor thing, but I didn't have a phone with me and I had to go back to the kitchen and get it. He was a good boy, though, and he closed and locked the door, and I ran back out to grab my mum's phone. It was at this point, too, that I heard glass cracking again, and I started to absolutely lose my mind. I started crying and shaking, and I called my sister. I don't really know why, but I called her and told her that someone was trying to break in the house. She freaked out and told me that I need to call the cops right now. I told her that I was scared and I didn't want to hang up. I finally did, though, and I called the police. I was still in the kitchen and I saw another man run across the backyard. I was sobbing and shaking and the police weren't being quick enough, but after asking for my address and the necessary questions, they told me to stay on the line and they were sending someone out right now. And man, did it feel like it took forever for them to get there. But finally, a cop car drove around the neighborhood and said that we were fine. I told him that there were two men outside trying to get in, so they got out of their cars and looked around the house. They went to the side that I heard the giant crack at, and they saw that one of the windows was shattered and another one was cracked, which means that they were definitely trying to get in, but I don't know what they were planning to do. There was a giant bed frame in front of the two broken windows too, and I think if it wasn't there, I probably would not be telling this story, to be honest. They never did catch the guys that were trying to get in, but man, do I hope that I'm never in a situation like this ever again. I'm a 13-year-old male and I live somewhere in Alabama with my family. My dog Boomer, he has some good genes in his blood, so he's a good dog and all. He's a Doberman mixed with some sort of a hound, so he has good guard dog genes in him and hunting dog too, I think. Anyway, Boomer had different sounds for different things. He has his whiny bark for when he needs something. He has his kind of deepish bark that's equivalent to, hey, what's that? And then he has his aggressive bark when the thing that he's barking at gets too close. There's also the ghost howl, a chilling howl when he finds something, but that's another thing. So, I'm inside reading some stories on Reddit or something at some stage when I hear Boomer switching between his whiny bark and his deep bark. I go outside to check on him because, well, he might be stuck and or he sees a dog. So, I go outside and Boomer is looking at the area behind him while pacing back and forth and looking at me in the field area. I get closer to Boomer and his ears go back and the fur on his lower back stands up and he starts barking aggressively. And I stupidly get too close to find out what he's barking at, and when I get out of Boomer's chain length, we keep him on a chain because he's too big for the inside and he also breaks other bindings. A man lunges at me and out of reflex I jerk backwards back to Boomer. Boomer barks some more, but the guy doesn't get the hint and just keeps coming at me. Boomer barks a final time before jumping up and biting his arm. The man screams in pain, alerting my grandma, who looks out the kitchen window and sees everything that's unfolding. She calls the cops, while my grandpa comes outside with his gun ready. The man, though, he kicked my dog and ran off into the night. Eventually the police showed up, but unfortunately they never found the guy. I guess that he knows that if he comes back that he'll probably get bit again and possibly shot. So I doubt that he's going to, but who knows what would have happened if my dog wasn't there that night. I was on a date in Camden with a girl who, from the photos, I wasn't overly excited about, but in the flesh, man, did she make my eyebrows shoot off. She was really pretty, smart, and funny. We had a few cocktails, and I think it was the Blues Kitchen before going to the gay bar in Camden, which has since closed down. I think it was called the Black Cap at some stage. Anyway, the date's going well, and we meet these people who join our table, and the guy tells me at the bar my date said that she wanted me to kiss her. I did, and it turned out that the guy was just helping us out by moving things along. My date was really shocked and told me that I was bold, but she liked it. She came back to my hotel room with me, which was a 10-minute walk away. The room was kind of small but cool and space agent style. We were both pretty drunk and made out a lot. Then she started crying about problems that she was having with a friend who was really sick and her job was really stressful, and full on sobbing too. She left in embarrassment even though I was worried about her leaving like that, but she said that she would be okay. As she left, I saw a large man in a black thick leather jacket in the corridor though. He was staring at my date as she left and then stared at me as I closed the door. I was pretty wasted though, so after checking my date got on a bus, I had a bit of a nap and was woken up by banging on the door. I ignored it, but then it kept going, so I got up and staggered to the door and opened it a crack. And I recognized the leather elbow in the arm as the door was shoved open violently. I was drunk and the jolt of the door caused me to fall over. Luckily, the room entrance was small and around the width of a door, so my back was against the wall by the door while my feet touched the other wall. My body kept the door closed as this man kept shoving against the door, but I managed to get it closed again, locked it, and went to sleep as I was still drunk. When I woke up in the morning, I honestly thought that I dreamt the man in the door. But when I looked down at the side of my ribs, hips and thigh too, I had these massive dark bruises there. I have no idea who that guy was or what he wanted, but I think that I was pretty lucky, and I'm really glad that the room was tight on space, because if it hadn't have been, that guy would have gone in really easily. Like I said, I have no idea who that guy was or what he wanted. I don't know if he was connected to my date in some way, but man, it was a really weird night. Just after graduation, my family moved into a house previously owned by my great-grandmother. There were 5 of us at first, my parents and I, my friend Kay, and my boyfriend, their husband, who had moved in due to not wanting to move out of state with his family. The house had a sort of odd layout to it, as it had been a mobile home that had an attic in front of it, sort of a living room, and the back master bedroom as well. My boyfriend had a room on one end of the house, Kay and I shared a room on the other end, and the kitchen was in the middle. And to get to the main bathroom, you would have to go through the room that Kay and I shared. So, it started with little things, weird feelings, moving objects, the sound of furniture being dragged and moved. Most notably, too, the bathroom door. We started keeping it shut at night, otherwise it would open and close on its own. It did this all the time as well, day or night. We checked for drafts and anything that could have caused it, but in the end we never found anything. But we began to notice too that any time it started to move, if we got irritated and told it to stop, the door would immediately cease to move. But one night, we hadn't been in bed long, when Kay got up to use the bathroom. I heard her leave the bathroom without closing the door, and I told her to close it because it bothered me. And I heard the long creak of the door as it slowly shut, but didn't quite click into place. I irritably told her to shut it all away, and when she responds, that wasn't me, in a horrified tone from the opposite corner of the room. At that, I turned the light on and the door was completely shut, just not clicked into the frame. I ripped the door open and there was nothing there. We were obviously completely freaked out. I slammed the door and then I told her that this is why I kept the door shut. There was also the knocking, as I like to call it. But we had 3 doors on the house leading outside, and pretty frequently, we would hear 3 knocks on any of the said doors. I always look out the window before opening the door if we're not expecting any guests, because you never know who might be there. So I would check the window, and there was nobody there. I was once standing in front of the back door when this happened as well, and I could clearly see through it, through the window on the door that is, that there was nobody there, but the door was shaking, it was hit that hard. It wasn't long after this, too, that my boyfriend started having vivid nightmares of something trying to drag him from his bed. Later, my mother's friend was over with a toddler, and he was exploring like a normal kid his age does, and he stopped in the doorway to my boyfriend's room and stared for a while. He then came back and started saying ghost and pointing at my boyfriend's room. Nobody had mentioned anything remotely related to ghost or scary, and this was just nowhere near Halloween either, so we have no idea where this came from. We tried to brush it off though. I mean, it's just a kid saying silly things, right? But he was insistent. We tried to ask for details, but he would only say, "Go see," and "ghost." I pointed him back to his room, and he pointed at the small game closet and insisted, "Ghost, go see." I opened the door for him, and there was nothing there, but he insisted that there was a ghost. The worst night we spent in the house by far, though, was when we'd been in bed for about 45 minutes, when suddenly something slammed into the bed with enough force to shake the whole mattress. My bed frame didn't actually fit in the small room, so the mattress was on a sort of box spring on the floor. But both Kay and I definitely felt it. We turned the light on, and again, there was nothing there, so we got as far from the edges of the bed as possible, and we just tried to sleep. But something grabbed Kay's foot and yanked her blanket away. Once again, the light revealed nothing, and we were terrified. And then something slammed into the wall next to the other side of the bed. These things continued into the night as well, and we ended up just sleeping in the living room with my dad staying with us. My parents eventually moved out after a few months into the house that they were working on and left us in this house. So Kay and I moved into the master bedroom and made our old room the area where we kept our 2 new puppies' kennels. On 3 occasions, my 8-month-old Pit would walk into that room, throw himself on the floor with all of his hair standing on end, and scream and growl while fixated on the upper corner of the room. When he would do this, I would have to physically drag him from the room and shut the door to calm him down. The other dog, too, would somehow get out of a locked kennel when he was left in there alone, and the kennel would still be locked and secure. We still have no idea how he did it. Kay and my mother started hearing voices too when they were there alone, and the uncomfortable feeling just got way worse. One night, something actually started clawing at our bedroom door, and we were so freaked out by it that I called my boyfriend to come look at the door from the other side because I was too scared to unlock and open it. The house actually got 5 feet of water in it during Hurricane Harvey, and we tore it down and we eventually moved. I never felt really upset over losing that house, though. I was kind of relieved to be rid of it, if I'm being honest, and really hoped that the flood took whatever was in. In autumn of 2018, I actually broke my left foot, and it required surgery. I lived in a not-so-nice neighborhood in southwest Detroit. Because of the surgery, I had been staying with family while I recuperated, but after the first few days, I drove home to gather some clothes and planned on staying there and driving back to my family's house the next day. I crutched into my house as I was simultaneously talking with a friend that called moments before I got into my dorm. I really needed to pee, and with the phone nestled between my ear and shoulder, I sort of crutched through my bungalow to the rear of the house. With me talking and the noise of the crutches, I thought that I was hearing noises from my attic, but it wasn't until I got into my bathroom and stopped that I was sure that someone or something was upstairs. I said to my friend something along the lines of, Hey, hang on a second. There's something upstairs here." The initial split-second thought was that an animal was in the house. No sooner I said that, the loudest boom came down the floor in what seemed like directly over me, and it sounded like the weight of a full-grown man falling. Side details of the attic as well. It was like an attic that could have been converted into a bedroom that went the full length of the house, and I'm 6 feet tall and I could stand right up in the middle of it. But my friend was immediately surprised, responding like, "What was that?" She actually thought that I had fallen, and I was like, "No, someone broke in, they're upstairs." I book out, on crutches no less, back to the front of the door, and I'm waiting for someone to come busting out of my house, somewhere. I put the phone back to my ear and tell my friend that I'll have to call back so I could call a friend who lives nearby. There's no answer. It's not even 60 seconds after my exit. And as luck would have it, a police cruiser turns out of the alley onto my block. I see them and they me, so I wait for them to stop, and they do. But they weren't the typical police, though. Like I said, it's not the greatest area. It was an unmarked police car with plainclothes officers, a gang unit car or something, and here in D they're called the Jump Out Boys. I explained what just happened, how I just came home and that I think someone is in my house. This is now all maybe 3 or 4 minutes from the time that I arrived. So, 4 policemen, weapons drawn, embark through my house, and I crouched in tow. They get to the stairs, call out Detroit police several times, and then they head up. I wait at the bottom, and in 1 minute or so, they make their descent and tell me nothing. Nobody's there, and as quickly as they entered, they made their exit. I thank them, and they just drive away. Now, at most, about 8 minutes have lapsed, and there I am, just looking like, what happened? Standing very close to my door in my front room, trying to digest everything and wondering what I had heard. Maybe 20 seconds go by, and I'm just kind of standing there silently with my ear turned up to the roof of my house when I hear what starts almost as a dragging sound, starting at the rear of my house, growing louder as it gets closer to the front. No sooner as it's right above me, the loudest crash as if it was trying to come right through the floor that separated me from it. And I moped right out of there and left back to my family's place, quick smart. About 5 days later, I returned and was really anxious about being there, but nothing ever happened, and slowly, living there just went back to normal. In the end, I really don't know what happened that day, if there was someone living in my roof, or someone broke in, or if perhaps something paranormal was going on.